civil unrest, polarization, the disruption of technology, economic destabilization, all culminating in a complete implosion of American trust. The results? Running to big government for help to save the day and scare away the big bad wolf of uncertainty. The result has been a slow but steady merging of government and corporations. But none of this has happened by chance.
Yeah, it's bad. Threat to the republic and to the order of American society, bad.
The civil unrest we've seen, the polarization we've all experienced, the economic destabilization has all been conveniently helped along by our elected leaders in Washington who support a new world order, socialists, progressives. It's all been spurred on by the socialists, all within our own borders who want nothing more than complete control over every facet of your life. For a while, climate change was going to get them there. After all, the Green New Deal had everything to do with furthering the tight grasp of big government that currently is hanging around your neck.
I can't find common ground if somebody says climate change is just not happening, when almost all the world's scientists tell us it is. I don't know where to start talking to you about this.
But it didn't begin there with sweet little AOC. It began way back in 1992 with a plan called Agenda 21, the plan about moving toward a centralized government with fighting climate change as the proxy to get us there. Agenda 21 was later updated to Agenda 30, and now, all of a sudden, climate change wasn't enough. And last October, the creators of this plan for takeover added preparation for a global pandemic to it as well. Surprise, surprise, here we are in the midst of a pandemic, and socialists declaring it an opportunity
to reshape the way we do business.
This pandemic is giving our favorite socialists the chance to enact a new world order in a way climate change never could. Prepare yourselves for Event 201, the coronavirus Wargame. Hello, America. Tonight's show is a warning. The coronavirus has given people all over the world everything they have ever dreamt of, especially if they like big government, if they're socialists or communists. It is an opportunity born out of crisis. And it's a plan that was launched in 1992. It was furthered in 2015. And it was finally war-gamed just 6 months ago. And what is at stake? Your rights, your freedom, global governance in the form of global socialism. As we put this together, it occurred to us that it is possible, and actually I think it's almost a given, that this show will be throttled. It'll be demonetized or outright blocked by YouTube and Facebook. It may happen tonight or in the coming days. There is also more than a good chance that we're going to be called conspiracy theorists, etc., because there are questions that don't want to be asked. There are corners they don't want people snooping around in. Everything I'm going to show you is out in the open. But it is going to, it's the context that will bother them, because I happen to disagree with their goals. I don't think anything that they did was wrong. I think the fact that they're pulling this off now by using this crisis is a problem. But if you happen to like socialism, you will probably like what they plan on doing and are currently doing. Everything that they're going to say about me or this show has already been war-gamed. No kidding. Back in October, and I'll show you all about it here in just a few minutes. But they need the institutions like the WHO, who is in bed with the Chinese Communist Party. They are the ones who have been designated as the official gatekeepers of information. If any information harms this, well, then it will be called a conspiracy theory, and it will be throttled down. You can see this from the CEO of YouTube. Yesterday, she was explaining anything that goes against the WHO is a violation of YouTube policies. Watch.
talk about that as raising authoritative information. But then we also talk about removing information that is problematic. Of course, anything that is medically unsubstantiated, so people saying like, take vitamin C, take turmeric, like those all will cure you. Those are the examples of things that would be a violation of our policy. Anything that would go against World Health Organization recommendations would be a violation of our policy. And so remove is another really important part of our policy.
Now, I said earlier the WHO was designated in this role. Now, I want you to listen to a reply from a representative from the United Nations regarding who should be the gatekeepers of information. Watch.
I agree on the point on having a centralized source of information and a world body that could have garner the respect of everyone, and I think the WHO in this instance might be that.
Okay, there wouldn't be a problem with that if that meeting that she just spoke at took place a week or even a month ago. But that happened in October, 6 weeks before coronavirus cases began popping up in China. Everything you're seeing right now, all of the responses, all of the companies and the governments all over the world, what the banks are doing, what people are saying, and the responses to people like me were all war-gamed. It is chilling. I mean, it's good in some ways. This is what people should be doing. Wargaming to make sure that we're prepared for anything, but not when you don't agree with their agenda. Tonight, I'll show you all of it, but be warned. As you heard from the YouTube CEO, they do not want these questions asked. They do not want anyone causing any trouble. This is why I urge you, I almost plead with you to subscribe to Blaze TV or a source that you trust that is not part of this. They can censor us, but they cannot censor us on our own platform. YouTube and Facebook are clearly under a very big boot from the WHO and ultimately from the overlords in the Communist Party of China. I urge you to go to blazetv.com/Glenn, get $30 off your subscription for the year. Use the promo code Glenn. Become a supporter, please. Now, I want to take you back last year. Last year, if you're a usual watcher of mine, I did a show where I was prompted to look at some very specific things, and I laid them out all on a chalkboard that's actually still up in my radio studio. And there is an extensive chalkboard that is in the writer's room, about 18 different things, but I boiled them down into four categories. I said, this is what's going to happen here in the next couple of years. Polarization and civil unrest, they would continue to get worse and worse. We hit a critical stage on the same levels of 1930s era Europe. We would go back to the riots of 68. We've been priming for this over the past few years. The far right, far left, everyone in between literally been coming to blows in cities all over America. And our politicians and our media is only making things worse. 10 years ago, we would never have believed groups like Antifa would be terrorizing American citizens in the name of communism. But here we are. We wouldn't have believed that the Democratic Party would openly support them, at least not publicly. But Keith Ellison said, screw it, and took off the mask. Now let's fast forward to the past few days. Protests now are starting again. They're sparking up all over the country. In Michigan, drivers jammed the streets to protest these stay-at-home orders, these draconian laws that are imposed on Americans. Similar protests are springing up all over the country, from Minnesota to New Jersey to California. People are asking, do I live in America anymore? The latter of which, by the way, we saw demonstrations begin after the state and local government told them they couldn't even go to the park. And to make their point, they filled a skate park with 37 tons of sand. Just so you know, that's not a city or a state park. That is a private park. They didn't even let the owner of that park know the city was going to do that. Comply, or you'll be made to comply. Now, if you want to see a hornet's nest, just keep kicking it. Keep doing things like this. And it will redefine the term civil unrest. And this is before everything that we will see when Antifa and the Bernie bros join the fray this summer. This is before we hit 20% unemployment. And you can take it to the bank that much of it will absolutely be orchestrated. And anything on the left will be excused. and embraced by politicians and by the media. The next thing I wrote down was economic destabilization. The economy, I said, will hit a critical stage. With bank and central bank failures, stock market will plunge and prices will collapse. Well, we're well on our way with that. And the Fed is predicting an unemployment rate that would hit 32%. We're currently in a forced economic recession. And I remind you, they did this deliberately, as we have told you on earlier shows, that this is from the Fed itself. It's not a question of how did it happen. The only question remains is they put us into this recession intentionally. Now, will it become the second Great Depression? Then I said, watch out for tech disruption. Another critical stage is achieved with jobs, finance, communication, and privacy now all disrupted, which would lead to number 4, an implosion of trust. Trust in the government, the media, tech, finance, and corporations had eroded so much that they all decided they needed each other and they began to merge together. All of this culminates with a cry just to, for the love of God, please just make it stop. How many of us would have not put up with any of this stuff just 3 weeks ago? But look at what we're putting up with now. And when they say we're just going to open up the economy just a little bit here, how many of us are fine, okay. We're not going back to normal, but many of us will just be fine with getting some of it back. This is a real problem. General consensus will be possible and clear. A new world order, just make it stop. Now, let me tell you the good news. The entire plan is inherently flawed, and it's spoiled by one key variable that they always underestimate and leave out. Your ability to do your own homework and stay informed. Your ability to think on your own. Do not take a single word I say tonight as gospel. They think you're stupid. I do not. Maybe I missed something. Maybe I have it wrong. Do your own research. But it is only an informed republic that is going to be able to put a stop to it. The whole aim of practical politics, said H.L. Mencken, is to keep the populace alarmed and hence clamorous to be led to safety by an endless series of hobgoblins, most of them imaginary, end quote. The hobgoblin and the path for takeover has been climate change. They had to have us fear climate change, a great disaster. And the New Green Deal was nothing more than a giant socialist jobs program to completely redefine our economies globally. And they don't even try to deny it. I want to show you something. This is from the People's World, one of the leading Marxist publications in the United States. And let me just quote from it here. Winning the Green New Deal on the road to socialism. Wow, sounds great so far. The whole aim, let's see here. This is a plan that kicked into gear in June 1992. And 178 countries met in Brazil, and they adopted something that we've talked about in the past called Agenda 21. Their stated goal at the time was to, quote, build a global partnership for sustainable development to improve human lives and protect the environment. Well, that sounds good, right? But like the Green New Deal, a lot of their proposals seemed more interested in policies that didn't have anything to do with protecting the environment. In September 2000, Agenda 21 member states began to publicize some of these goals. They included universal single-payer health care. What? Universal education and wealth redistribution. It's basically exactly what the Green New Deal is about today. But it was written 20 years ago, and it's not new. It's not anything about being green either. It's all about being red, socialist red. Okay, so why am I talking to you about climate change and things that happened years ago? It's the pandemic that we're dealing with. Well, stick with me for a couple of minutes more. You will understand. In 2013, the UN General Assembly set up a 30-member working group to identify their goals. And in January 2015, Agenda 21 went away and was rebranded Agenda 2030. They established in there 17 sustainable development goals to, quote, A shared blueprint for peace and prosperity for people and the planet now and into the future. Oh, they go on. They want to end poverty and other deprivations that must go hand in hand with strategies that improve health and education, reduce inequality, and spur economic growth, all while tackling climate change and working to preserve our oceans and forests. Wow, what a communist utopia! We're going to do all of those things and protect the environment and stuff. All right, so Agenda 2030 now has penetrated all the way down to your local government. You probably don't know this, but I'm going to send you on a Google search here in a minute. Have you ever seen the term local sustainability strategy pop up in your state or city government? I want you to Google those words, but add your state and your city. You're going to find official websites with a .gov at the end all over the country. From California, of course, Oregon, to even El Paso, Texas. In reality, Agenda 2030 is all about inventory and control. How many people are there? Where do they live? Can we move those people into cities that they control? Sustainable Development Goal 11. It talks about, and if I may quote, integrated and sustainable human settlement planning and management, with a quote, ratio of land consumption rate to population growth rate. Oh my gosh, this sounds like we're so free in America, doesn't it? To Agenda 2030, people are the disease, and they need to be taken out of the rural areas and herded into cities. I wish I had time tonight to go through all of this, but there is a reason that you might have noticed that farmland is being claimed by eminent domain in states all over the country. It's this. They are targeting our kids now and indoctrinating them in public school systems. They are moving forward, and they don't hide it. You can see it in their charter called Transforming Our World. This, I think, is going to infuriate you. Let me give you the quote. What we're announcing today, an agenda for global action for the next 15 years, is a charter for people and planet in the 21st century. Children and young women and men are critical agents of change and will find in the new goals a platform to channel their infinite capabilities for activism into the creation of a better world. Wow. You know what makes sense a little bit more? Is this.
This is all wrong. I shouldn't be up here. I should be back in school on the other side of the ocean. Yet you all come to us young people for hope. How dare you?
Yeah, did you know that because of a Facebook glitch, we know that she didn't write any of her posts? They're written by her father and this guy, a climate change delegate from the United Nations. These people will do anything. The climate change agenda is being used by advocates of Agenda 21, then later Agenda 2030, for one thing, and that is control over you. And now nationalizing businesses is one of the steps in this process. I want to go back to El Paso. Let's look at some of the wording in El Paso's document for sustainable development that I showed you earlier. It says, city resilience is the capacity of individuals, communities, institutions, businesses, and systems within the city to survive, adapt, and thrive no matter what kind of chronic stresses and acute shocks they experience. Let me compare this now to Agenda 2030's founding document. We underscore that sustainable development requires concrete and urgent action. It can only be achieved with a broad alliance of people, government, civil society, and private sector all working together to secure the future we want. Okay, well, I don't like this, but is it that evil? An alliance of government and private businesses. An alliance of government and private businesses. I want you just to notice what's happening. Did you know that for the bailout, we now, all of us in the United States, own a piece of all of the airlines? It was part of the deal. You can take the bailout money, but we are now investors and owners of those airlines. Where is that in the Constitution? It's government and businesses preparing for chronic stresses and acute shocks. Chronic and acute. It's an interesting choice of words because when climate change proved to not be enough for these people, they had to look for something else, something entirely new. Coronavirus. Don't believe it? Watch. All right, I want to talk to you a little bit about rough greens. We'll stop for this 1 minute, and then we'll finish the show out here together. Dry dog food has to have a 2 to 3 year shelf life, so it doesn't spoil on the shelf. So the people who make the dog food have to sterilize the food when they make it. In other words, they have to kill anything that might be alive in your pet's food. Well, dogs are no different than our body. We're both animals. We need stuff to help us process food. We need probiotics and enzymes and vitamins and healthy microbacteria. These are the things that we need. Our dogs need it too for their food, because especially their food, it's dead food. As a parent of Uno, I am happy I found Rough Greens VitaSmart. It's not a dog food. It's a healthy supplement that you put on your dog's food, all of the live nutrients necessary for superior dog health. No matter if you feed the most expensive dog food on the market or you make your dog's food at home. Rough Greens changes your dog for the better. I was out yesterday and he was just running the fence line like I've never seen him do before. That's Rough Greens. You want your dog not to survive, but to thrive? Try the 14-day Jumpstart Challenge today. $14.95. See the difference in your dog in 14 days or less. See your dog thrive again. Go to Rough Greens, ruffgreens.com/Beck. All right, before the break, I ended the segment with sustainable development words that are typically used in the medical field, chronic and acute. Similar wording was used in that Marxist publication I showed you earlier that explained how the Green New Deal would lead to socialism. And I quote, "If capitalist societies are too poor to cure hunger, how can they possibly find solutions to the far more complex destruction of humanity's environment?" I find this insanely ironic because 4 years after Agenda 2030 went public with their goal of bringing a global socialist government off the back of climate change, some of the very same people gathered in October 2019, just this last October, to Wargame on what was needed to fight a global pandemic. It was a conglomeration of business people, health experts, and government officials from all over the world. The event was called Event 201. Every year, there are about 200 outbreaks, but the big one that everyone is afraid of is the 201st. This war game was a plan to find out what it would need, what we need to do to prepare for the inevitable future. Now, it was a collaborative effort between Johns Hopkins University, one of the first progressive universities in the country, if not the first, Bill Gates, and the World Economic Forum. When the participants sat down to begin the game, this is what they were shown. Watch.
It began in healthy-looking pigs, months, perhaps years ago. A new coronavirus spread silently within herds. Gradually, farmers started getting sick. Infected people got a respiratory illness with symptoms ranging from mild flu-like signs to severe pneumonia. The sickest required intensive care. Many died.
Sound familiar? If you just exchange pigs for bats, you have exactly what's happening right now. I'm going to get more into this after the next break, but I'm not saying, and I want to make this clear, this was not started by the people that organized Event 201. This is just what these people do. They war game future crisis. They nailed this one. But they also nailed the plans for a larger, more centralized government in response to it. It's what they did for climate change, and it's also what they had in mind for a global pandemic. Bill and Melinda Gates, who co-sponsored the event, have made advocating for Agenda 2030 one of their main endeavors. They produce all kinds of things. They do this report, Goalkeepers. They produce it every year to ensure all 17 Sustainable Development Goals happen by the year 2030. Multiple other participants are directly linked to Agenda 2030. Sophia Borges, she is the UN Foundation's senior vice president. She was the chief negotiator from the UN, compelling countries to adopt Agenda 2030. Then there's Eduardo Martinez. He's an executive at UPS. He also serves on Impact 2030, a coalition to, quote, advance the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and on the board of United Nations Public-Private Sector Coalition. Did you know UPS was involved in this? The merging of public and private sectors. You're going to hear a lot about this. The other members included government officials at the highest levels, like the heads of the CDC in China and even the director of the CDC here in the United States. This scenario provided a direct pipeline from people pushing Agenda 2030 directly to targeted businesses and public policy makers. If you watch this entire event, which you can, one overriding theme always comes up. It's this.
The scenario also highlights the very critical role that global business and public-private partnerships play in preparing for and responding to pandemics.
And we know from past responses that public-private cooperation will be essential.
We're at the start of what's looking like it will be a severe pandemic. And there are problems emerging that can only be solved by global business and governments working together.
Global business and government coming together. That came up over and over and over again. And when the question of who should be given the global centralized orders, of course, Agenda 2030 UN rep spoke up immediately.
Thank you. Yes, I agree. And I wanted to speak to the point about having the honest broken. I think in this regard, the United Nations fits the bill. I think that given that the countries most affected are those that are low and middle income countries with unequal access to technology, to finances, the UN has a worldwide footprint, universally recognized, and universal membership.
Global crisis, business merging with government and giving the power and the credibility to the UN and WHO. Boy, that sounds like a recipe for disaster. No matter what the attendees tried to do, no matter what solutions they came up with, the scenario was designed and destined for catastrophe. In my opinion, it's, to use a Star Trek reference, the Kobayashi Maru. It was rigged from the start. In the simulation, 65 million people die. Global GDP retracts 11%. Markets go down 40%. This is their final produced video. See if any of it sounds familiar. Watch.
Attempts to control media messaging, originally aimed only at health-related misinformation, became used increasingly to quash political dissent. Economists say the economic turmoil caused by such a pandemic will last for years, perhaps a decade. The societal impacts, the loss of faith in government, the distrust of news, and the breakdown of social cohesion could last even longer. We have to ask, did this need to be so bad? Are there things we could have done in the 5 to 10 years leading up to the pandemic that would have lessened the catastrophic consequences? We believe the answer is yes. So, are we as a global community now finally ready to do the hard work needed to prepare for the next pandemic?
They didn't have 5 years to prepare. Instead, they had about 5 weeks. And are they not describing exactly to the T the chalkboard I opened my show with today? Faith in media, corporations, government, eroding, economic collapse, civil unrest, and a cry to prepare for the next crisis. I showed you who these people are and what they've been working on since 1992, and prepare in their minds means global centralized control. A global outbreak is exactly the kind of event that they've been waiting for. Climate change was taking too long, and it was losing. Well, hear it from their own mouths. Watch.
The annualized risk posed by pandemics is on par and rivals with climate change.
The scariest thing about Event 201 is that almost everything they predicted has come true. They predicted overwhelmed hospitals, the lack of PPE and ventilators, experimental drugs like hydroxychloroquine that would come out, everything. And their predictions will be used as ammo to push their radical agendas. I believe it is their intention to fundamentally transform the world and mold it into a centrally controlled monstrosity. Now that you've seen, read, or heard their plans for yourselves, do you agree with it? If you've just only seen this, don't answer that question. Go and do your own homework and then come back to the show. Make sure that you're heard by local and state and federal government officials. Global socialism, not on our watch. Since things like nuance and context are apparently dead, I want to emphasize, in the off chance that one of these media critics or fact checkers accidentally hear this part of the show, so listen up. I am not saying that Event 201 is a conspiracy. It's not. I am not saying that Event 201 caused all of the policy reactions to the pandemic that we're seeing. The event called Event 201, the participants were doing their job, which was to wargame possible outcomes. Now, your job is to listen to their proposals and their conclusions. You can read all of the official statements online. You can check out the entire Agenda 2030 manifesto on the UN's website right now. You can watch the entire war game online. It's just whether you agree or disagree with their conclusions. They were right about the pandemic. Their solutions, I believe, are wrong. If you agree with me, you're bothered by any part of the manifesto, you need to talk to your elected officials right now. The UN, the WHO, and the media do not want us questioning any of these things. They don't want you learning about it and asking any questions. I've talked to you a lot about how government and big tech companies would merge. Government cannot resist the kind of powerful tools that tech companies now have to offer. It's far too useful, and we're seeing it this week. For instance, people trying to use Facebook to organize protests against the stay-at-home policies in California, New Jersey, and Nebraska had all of their efforts shut down. Facebook says the governments of those states instructed them to remove the content promoting these protest events. But the governors in all of those states, Nebraska, New Jersey, say they never told Facebook to censor anything. Well, somebody is lying, but regardless who ordered it, the censorship is happening. Just like the Raleigh, North Carolina police breaking up crowds gathered outside the state capitol last week and then tweeting this: protesting is a non-essential activity. No, but it is thoroughly America. These are dark times for American liberty. I've talked to you about how the media and the social media would collaborate to stifle information. Well, here's Mark Zuckerberg last week explaining how Facebook is working hard to stop the misinformation being spread about the pandemic.
There are also other misinformation that may not lead to imminent risk of physical harm, but still isn't the type of stuff we want to be spreading through our system. And there we work with independent fact checkers. And so far during this crisis, those fact checkers have marked 4,000 pieces of content, individual articles false, which has led to us showing warning labels to more than 40 million times across our products when people come across something that's false. And the warning labels work. We know that because 95% of the time when someone sees a piece of information that has a fact check on it, they don't go through and consume that information.
Okay, here's the problem, Mark, with your cute little fact-checking system. It doesn't work, and I have the evidence. Facebook has been burned badly since the 2016 election, so they're scrambling to save face, pardon the pun. But that's what they're doing, and they are very proud of their third-party fact-check program. They use fact-checkers that are certified by the International Fact-Checking Network. I'll tell you more about them here in a minute. Look, misinformation on social media is a huge problem. But what's the point of fact-checking and having a fact-checking program if you ban good information in your effort to contain bad information? We now know from first-hand experience that at least one of Facebook's certified fact-checkers does really sloppy work. After my Wednesday night show aired 2 weeks ago, one of our Facebook posts promoting the show got flagged as false news by USA Today, which is one of Facebook's fact-checking partners. The headline of our post said this: China lies exposed. Virus believed to have come from a biolab, not bat soup. That headline is 100% true. It linked to a clip from my show in which I showed you a Chinese video of Chinese scientists from the Wuhan lab collecting bat samples for study. There's nothing conspiratorial about it. Yet the warning on Facebook said, quote, We've added a notice to the post so others can see that it is false. It's almost as if the USA fact checker didn't watch the video at all, and they probably didn't. So because of USA Today, one person decided this post was false, Facebook flagged it and reduced distribution. They took a video that was already getting hundreds of thousands of views and snuffed it out. They put a scarlet letter of false news on my name and on my page, and that restricts how often it is viewed, which affects shareability and monetization. It also restricts you, because if you shared that link from your friends, you didn't get a notice, but your voice was silenced without you even knowing about it. But we knew there was nothing false about our post, nothing false about the episode that linked to it. So we refused to back down. We submitted a rebuttal to Facebook. We tweaked the headline of our post, which now reads, quote, "New evidence calls into question COVID-19 origins." Changing the word of that headline is the only change we made. And we volunteered to do it, just trying to appease Facebook's fact-checking gods, in this case USA Today, to get them to reverse this completely unfair and untrue punishment. Well, we were shocked because so many things never turn out this way. But after receiving our rebuttal, USA Today actually removed their false news rating and put our post back online. It now has almost 700,000 views. Unfortunately, it's not really a win because Facebook's false fact-checking hurt our reputation, hurt us financially. Even if it was just for a few days, how many hundreds of thousands of people saw the false news rating on our page and won't bother visiting again? This never should have happened in the first place. Who are you to tell us what's true and false and to be the final arbiter? What gives you the window into the kind of censorship tactics that we are up against every single day? Who are you to do this to us? Social media titans? And that's why it's so important that you subscribe to Blaze TV and invite others to do the same. Ironically, after Facebook initially flagged our post, even the Washington Post and CNN reported that the coronavirus may have come from the Wuhan lab. Really? We just happen to be 2 weeks ahead of everybody else. Something tells me they haven't had to deal with the same false news accusations as I have, especially since the Washington Post is one of Facebook's certified fact checkers. Facebook has wild inconsistency in problems with their standards when it comes to separating fact from fiction. Last week, they were patting themselves on the back for their new strategy to deal with coronavirus misinformation. Now, anytime users click on what Facebook deems to be false information, they will instead be sent this coronavirus Mythbusters page from the World Health Organization. Facebook's vice president of integrity, and yes, that is his actual title, explained, quote, "We want to connect people who may have interacted with harmful information about the virus with the truth from an authoritative sources. In this case, they see or hear these claims, again, off of Facebook." Oh, the authoritative source? The WHO? The WHO that echoed and defended the Chinese Communist Party every step of the way during the pandemic, that said it can't be spread human to human. Remember that WHO? That initially they lied about the coronavirus and the transmission. We're supposed to take them. So Facebook now wants us to trust the WHO as the authority on all things coronavirus. It also wants you to trust in the authoritative International Fact-Checking Network, the organization it uses to save the world from people like me. Here's why they don't like people like me. Because I ask too many questions. I don't just automatically accept the version of things declared by the WHO, the UN, the federal government, Donald Trump, the Congress, Republicans, Democrats, or anybody. Neither should you. There's very good reasons to be skeptical. For example, one of the IFCN's most recent certified fact checkers is an organization called Science Feedback. Well, last month they conducted a fact check of this New York Post article with the headline, "Don't buy China's story, coronavirus may have leaked from a lab." Well, Science Feedback rated that article incorrect. But one of the two fact-checkers on the story is a woman named Danielle Anderson. We looked into her. She's an assistant professor at Duke Medical School. Oh. Well, she also works on projects in collaboration with the Wuhan Institute of Virology. In fact, she states, quote, "I have worked in this exact laboratory at various times for the past 2 years," end quote. Now, I have no idea whether Danielle Anderson's fact-checking assessment is trustworthy or not, but the idea that she actually works with and in the Wuhan lab occasionally and probably saying something bad about China would make sure that relationship stops, I think maybe she should be considered maybe a little biased in this situation. The IFCN, Facebook, they tout their unbiased, rigorous certification process. So this got us wondering, what exactly is the International Fact-Checking Organization? Well, turns out that it is a project of the Poynter Institute, founded in 1975. Now, Poynter bills itself as, quote, "the world's leading instructor, innovator, convener, and resource for anyone who aspires to engage and inform citizens." Wow. Poynter also owns PolitiFact. PolitiFact's two largest financial supporters last year were, let me see here, first, EW Scripps Company, and Facebook. PolitiFact is also one of the IFCN's certified fact-checkers, which means, in essence, that the IFCN certifies itself as a legitimate fact-checker. Wow, that's fantastic. It's a good thing they endorse themselves. Facebook is also one of the largest funders of the Poynter Institute. Other major funders of Poynter include, the Tides Foundation. And you cannot make it up, but Open Society. Yes, of course, he's always there. Mr. Spooky Dude himself, George Soros. And that brings us full circle back to the globalists who are licking their chops at the potential for this pandemic to provide a giant funnel towards more centralized global control and ultimately global socialism. Facebook, whether they realize it or not, are clearly partners in this drive towards centralized control. Whether it's filtering users to the WHO or using the IFCN as the clearinghouse for the approved truth, doesn't that disturb you, just hearing that, approved truth? They are part of the international progressive mindset that doesn't trust people and certainly doesn't trust freedom. This mindset goes all the way back to the elitism of the original progressive movement, in which the socialists are at their core. The government, business, healthcare, all areas of our life must be designed and controlled by elite panels of approved experts who know much more than you do about everything. Remember Big Brother's slogan in George Orwell's 1984? It still captures this socialist mindset. Freedom is slavery. Joining me after the break is an expert on the UN's Agenda 2030, Rosa Koire. Back in a minute. So I want to introduce you to somebody. Her name is Rosa Koire. She is the author of Behind the Green Mask, Agenda 21. I think this is all you need to know. She posts, she's a blogger on her website, Democrats Against UN Agenda21.com. So we're not just, this is not just some political hack on the right that is saying this. This is somebody who actually on the left or in the Democratic Party that actually believes in freedom as well. Welcome to the program, Rosa. How are you?
I'm great. Glad to be with you, Glenn.
Okay, so Rosa, you have been listening and read the information on the show before you got here. Tell me what I'm missing. What part of this do you think needs to be emphasized, or did I miss?
Well, I think you hit it. But one thing I'd like to really throw in here and emphasize is that United Nations Agenda 21, Sustainable Development, is a 100-year plan. It's the plan for the 21st century. So Agenda 2030 is a 30-year milestone in that plan. And I do believe that the reason that Agenda 2030 is so emphasized right now is because the United Nations and other entities would just as soon have you forget about Agenda 21, since there is so much information out there right now for you to read about Agenda 21. So let's not trash all of that. We've got a lot there that is considered the action plan, the comprehensive blueprint for your life.
But they went and they included pandemic this year, which was new. And did they see that as a super highway to push these things through faster if indeed a pandemic would happen?
We really are experiencing a revolution right now. That's what we have. And I'm sure if they could have arranged for an alien landing, they would have done that. Because as you said, as you noted, climate change, it's terror, and it certainly is existentially affecting, generations of people. But it just really wasn't having the huge impact that was necessary to really move this plan into a revolutionary footing. And this is an economic collapse, an economic and social collapse. The only thing that's different about this is its scope. We have experienced this before in revolution, but never worldwide.
Right. And it's disturbing. You see these words that, business and government needs to work together, but that's really not it's not the way I would interpret that or you would interpret that. This is a new partnership, especially when it comes to tech. And what is happening to us now, I think people think that's going away. It will never go away. Government will never entangle itself from information and tech.
Yeah, this is, global data collection is an essential part of this plan. It's an essential part of any revolution, any takeover, is full information, total information on everyone. And of course, the perfect total information in this situation is your DNA. This is essentially what's going to be collected under the guise of necessary control of this virus.
Okay, so I want to talk to you a little bit about that. We're out of time in this, but we are going to do a special little podcast here, and we'll put it on social media. So check my social media channels, and we'll have more information on radio tomorrow. Back in just a second. There's another piece of this that revolves all around tech, and in the next 2 weeks, we will be bringing that to you on our Wednesday night special. Also, you want to know how to argue socialism? You want to know what they're doing? It's all in this book, Arguing with Socialists. You can get it wherever books are sold now. Thank you for watching. God bless America. Good night. Civil unrest, polarization, the disruption of technology, economic destabilization, all culminating in a complete implosion of American trust. The results? Running to big government for help,